Unearthing the Roots of Resistance. A deep dive into emotional triggers that fuel social movements. In the heart of every movement lies an invisible force, emotional triggers, that shape our reactions, motivations, and collective power. These triggers are not mere psychological phenomena, they are the sparks that ignite revolutions, the fuel behind protests, and the pulse of societal transformation. Understanding these triggers is essential for activists seeking to amplify impact, protect mental health, and navigate complex emotional landscapes. This exploration delves into how we identify, harness, and respond to these forces responsibly. The science behind emotional triggers, how the brain reacts. Emotional triggers operate through intricate neural pathways shaped over millennia of human evolution. When confronted with injustice, betrayal, or oppression, the brain activates survival mechanisms designed to prioritize immediate action over long-term reflection. This response involves the amygdala, a primitive part of the brain responsible for detecting threats, and the prefrontal cortex, which governs rational thought. However, during high-emotion scenarios, the amygdala often takes precedence, bypassing logical processing entirely. Biological alert system. The body releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, preparing individuals for fight-or-flight responses. These chemicals sharpen senses but also narrow cognitive bandwidth. Cognitive dissonance. When core beliefs conflict with new information, discomfort arises. Activists frequently encounter this when confronting systemic issues that challenge deeply held worldviews. Recognizing these biological responses helps activists distinguish genuine moral outrage from reactive anger. By acknowledging these natural processes, individuals can channel energy constructively rather than succumbing to impulsive behavior. Moreover, repeated exposure to triggering stimuli can lead to desensitization or burnout. Understanding neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, is vital for sustaining long-term involvement in social justice work. Historical context. Emotional triggers across landmark movements throughout history. Emotional triggers have been pivotal in shaping the trajectory of social change. From the civil rights marches of the 1960s to modern climate strikes, moments of intense emotion have defined movement milestones. For instance, the 1965 Selma to Montgomery March was fueled by the visceral horror of Bloody Sunday, where peaceful protesters faced brutal police violence. This event transformed abstract ideals into urgent, tangible demands for equality. Movements shaped by collective trauma. Studies show that shared trauma significantly amplifies group cohesion and resolve. Research published in Social Psychological and Personality Science found that communities experiencing collective adversity exhibit stronger solidarity and determination. The #MeToo movement exemplified this phenomenon. Survivors' stories of sexual harassment created a wave of shared anguish that transcended individual experiences, uniting millions globally around common cause. Personal identification. Mapping your unique emotional landscape. Every activist carries distinct emotional sensitivities influenced by personal history, cultural background, and lived experiences. Identifying these patterns is critical for self-awareness and sustainable engagement in social justice efforts. To begin mapping your emotional landscape, reflect on situations that consistently provoke strong reactions. Keep track of both positive emotions, like hope or empowerment, and negative ones such as fear or frustration. Journaling techniques. Maintain a daily log noting events, people, or media that evoke powerful feelings. Note physiological responses alongside emotional states, e.g., racing heartbeat, clenched fists. Trigger audits. Conduct periodic reviews of your journal entries to detect recurring themes. Are certain types of injustice particularly provocative? Do particular voices resonate more strongly? Consider creating visual maps connecting triggers to outcomes. This process reveals how specific stimuli translate into actions, relationships, or coping strategies within activist spaces. Additionally, pay attention to emotional numbness as much as intensity. Chronic suppression of feelings can indicate deeper unresolved conflicts requiring introspection. Ethical navigation. Harnessing emotion without exploitation. While emotional triggers empower activism, their misuse poses serious risks. Manipulating others' vulnerabilities for political gain undermines trust and perpetuates cycles of harm. Responsible activation requires distinguishing between constructive motivation and coercive tactics. Ethical leaders model vulnerability rather than exploit it, fostering environments where authentic expression thrives. Boundaries in triggered spaces establish clear boundaries when entering emotionally charged discussions. Know when to step back, seek support, or take time for self-care. Respect others' limits while asserting your own. A study in Journal of Applied Psychology revealed that teens maintaining healthy emotional boundaries demonstrated better decision-making and resilience compared to those suppressing feelings. Collective action dynamics. How shared emotions drive movement growth. When individuals unite around common emotional catalysts, the resulting synergy creates exponential momentum. Shared indignation at environmental degradation, for example, becomes a unifying force across diverse groups. These communal emotions forge bonds that transcend differences, creating solidarity among participants who might otherwise remain disconnected. The physical presence of crowds intensifies emotional resonance through proximity and mutual validation. Group polarization. Research indicates that discussion within like-minded groups tends to reinforce existing views, sometimes escalating emotional intensity beyond initial levels. Social proof. Observing others express righteous anger or joy validates individual feelings, making it easier to embrace similar emotional stances publicly. However, this dynamic requires careful management to prevent mob mentality or dogmatism. Conscious leadership ensures emotional energy remains directed toward constructive ends rather than destructive impulses. Potential pitfalls. Navigating emotional overload safely despite their power. Unchecked emotional triggers can lead to harmful consequences. Burnout, polarization, and ideological rigidity often stem from sustained exposure to overwhelming stimuli. Recognize warning signs early. Persistent fatigue, irritability, withdrawal from community activities, or decreased empathy toward opposing viewpoints. These may signal emotional exhaustion needing intervention. Recovery strategies. Implement regular decompression rituals, meditation, nature immersion, creative outlets, to restore balance after intensive activism periods. Peer support networks. Cultivate trusted relationships where honest conversations about emotional struggles occur without judgment or expectation of productivity. Remember that emotional well-being is foundational to effective advocacy. Prioritize rest and renewal as integral components of your activism journey. Building resilience against co-optation. Activist spaces risk becoming arenas for emotional exploitation when commercial interests or authoritarian regimes manipulate sentiment for control. Developing emotional intelligence safeguards against such co-option. Critically evaluate sources of inspiration. Does a particular narrative align with broader principles of equity and dignity, or does it serve narrower agendas? Distinguish between genuine outrage and manufactured crises. Detecting gaslighting tactics. Be wary of messages attempting to invalidate legitimate concerns, you're being too sensitive, or redirect focus away from real issues. Media literacy. Scrutinize framing techniques used in news coverage. Recognize how selective editing can distort realities to elicit desired emotional responses. Fostering critical consciousness enables discernment between authentic movements and manipulative campaigns masquerading as progress. Engage with diverse perspectives to maintain perspective and avoid confirmation bias. Conclusion. Emotional triggers form the bedrock of meaningful social change, yet require mindful navigation to maximize their benefits. Through awareness, ethical application, and intentional care, activists can transform these potent forces into instruments of lasting transformation. As you continue your journey, remember that true strength lies not in reacting impulsively but in responding with wisdom cultivated through deep understanding of yourself and the world around you.